Okay, well,
Okay.
Yay.
yeah. Thank you, Evans. I thank you very, very much, Betty, for this opportunity to be able to teach tonight. And we're talking about communication. And we know this is very, very, very important because how we transfer information to others says a lot. Sometimes they don't receive it the way we transfer it. So it is our responsibility to be sensitive to how we transfer information. Communication is defined as the imparting or exchanging of information or news. There, there are types of communication. So I'm going to talk about four types of communication. The first type is going to be nonverbal communication. And nonverbal communication is really, really important because many times the way we walk into a room, the way we stare at others, when we're speaking to them, do we look tenderly into their eyes? Do we have a soft look on our face? Or do we have a stone, angry look on our face? So nonverbal communication is very, very important. And the next would be verbal communication. And verbal communication is a form of communication that occurs through spoken word. So, how we speak things to others, the tone that we use, how we carry ourselves with body language, all of that is very, very important. Visual communication. Visual communication is very important because many times we don't say anything. It's not necessary. You just look at someone. I mean, when you're doing something that, especially those of us who had parents that had that look, you knew when you would be in trouble if you didn't stop what you were doing. When your mom cast that look at you, you knew you would be in trouble. So you understood right away. That look meant cut it out, stop it right now. And sometimes visual communication can just very well be somebody looks bored. They don't want to be bothered with you, or they look as if you can get lost. Written communication is involves the use of words, sentences, paragraphs in order to communicate. Many times when we're communicating in the written word, some feelings, emotions will come through. We can feel, and I know I can. I'm an extremely, extremely, extremely feeling person. So I can feel the emotions that when the person is writing to me, coming through the paper. So as we have seen, these four types of communication, each one carries its own merits. So the way we communicate is a reflection of our character. How we communicate is not separate from who we are. As believers, we want our godly character to shine, not only at home or at fellowship, but also at work. We live in the world, and we live in the word in our workplace just as we do every areas of our life. And I think a lot of times, Jesus followers, not just believers, but followers, those who really follow the commandments of Father, when we're in the workplace, we tend to feel like, oh, these people are getting on my nerves so bad. They don't know what's going on. And we don't give much importance to what they're saying if we can just brush them off. But the way we communicate to them, whether it's verbal, nonverbal, or we need to be careful of that because we are sending out information to them all the time. And the way we communicate is not just would please Father when we are by ourselves or we with other Christians, but it's extremely important when we are communicating to non-believers. The way we communicate many times may be the very thing that bring them to us and wanting to know what must they do to be saved. We seek success in our workplaces. We help others and we are positive examples and witnesses for God. And when I say witnesses for God, I know many, many workplaces frown upon you're really testifying on duty to others. You do that on lunch break or you do that at home and you call them up. But we can be a witness for God in our behavior. The way we carry ourselves is a reflection of who we are in the workplace. The way we communicate on the job reflects who we are as believers and is a factor in our success with people. We affect each other by the words we speak and by the way we speak to one another. Let's consider several practical keys of godly communication that we can apply specifically in the workplace. Number one, in the workplace, we want to speak positively, encouraging positive outcomes for situations. So when a situation comes up, we don't just say, well, nothing is going to happen. It never does. We try to look for ways that we can help the other person, the staff member or our coworker, to work through this and come to see a good end. We don't just speak doomsday to people. We give them positive words. And this can lead not only to a positive environment at work, but also to successful results. Because actually, when you're positive and people come to you, they may feel like they didn't even want to work with you at first, but now you are listening to them, you're hearing what they're really saying, you're processing what they're really saying. Now they don't have a problem listening to you, and it could improve the relationship that you have with them. Number two, endeavor to speak and act in a way that encourages unity. Just as we endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace in the household of believers, we can strive to communicate in a manner that promotes like-mindedness among our co-workers. Some ways to do this is to include speaking kindly of others, avoiding gossip, and lovingly handling communications, which can be very common in a workplace. We're going to look at Ephesians chapter 4, verse 3. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 3. Endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bonds of peace. So, the third thing is that we take the time to think before speaking. This gives us time to consider, to be clear and precise, and to be watchful of our tone. For successful communication, we want to ponder our path. So we don't want to be in a hurry and just speak anything that comes to our mind. Many people call it filtering. You take time, you think about how this person may receive this, what it would be like for you if you were receiving this message, and then you present it to them in a way that shows to them that you are considerate of them. Now we're going to look at Proverbs chapter 4, verse 26. Ponder the path of your feet, and let all your ways be established. And we're going to look at Proverbs chapter 15, verse 28. The heart of the righteous studies how to answer, but the mouth of the wicked pours out evil. You see what the scripture says? The heart of the righteous studies how to answer. So we take the time to ponder, to decide, how can I answer this? If you're asking me something that you may not very well like the answer, I must not lie to you. I must not enable you to cuddle something that is not okay. But what I need to do is to think carefully how I can word this to still tell the truth and not be weak, but not to put you on the defense where you're going to be feeling defensive.
Yeah.
Okay.
28. Sorry.
That was
28.
Proverbs 15:28.
Yes, 15:28. Thank you.
Yeah. And now we're going to look at Proverbs 15, chapter 15, verse 1.
Proverbs 15, verse 1.
Yes, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stir up anger. Now, if you stop and think about it, many times if somebody's just really, really venting and they're really coming at you, instead of trying to match them with that same emotion, can just stop, let them talk, let them finish. Softly ask them what they're saying. How can I help you? And many times it will just calm them right down. But if you push at them with the same anger they're coming at you with, then you're going to get into a really, really altercation, and the outcome might not be very well. Number 4 is that be honest and trustworthy in our communication at work. Whether or not this is common in the place we work, as children of God, we want to reflect his character. If we make a mistake, we admit it. We do not try to cover it up by lying. And that is really, really the truth. If you have made a mistake, it is very best to come clean and throw yourself at the mercy of the manager and say, I made this mistake. This is my mistake. You don't try to cover it up and push it off on someone else. You take responsibility for yourself. Not only are you doing what Father would have you to do, but you will gather and gain respect from your managers and from your co-workers. And now we're going to look at Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25. Therefore, put away lying. Let each of you speak truth with his neighbor, for we are members of one another. So we don't tell lies, but we're not harsh with people either. We tell facts and we tell it as gently as we can. And that was Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25. We show our trustworthiness by keeping confidentialities. Employers entrust us with confidential information so that we can carry out our job responsibilities, and we steward that information, using it for what is intended and nothing further. Well, I know in nursing, if you breach that, you can be brought up on charges. But I'm thinking that they're not necessarily talking about the medical field here. They're talking about everything. Anything that's confidential in your workplace and your manager tells you, I am trusting you with this information. It is not to be spoken outside of here. That does not mean you go home and tell your husband, your mother, your father, or anyone. It is confidential. Now, in medicine, it's a different story altogether. It is to your advantage that you do that. Not only because you're born again, but because charges can be brought up against you. If you're reading other people's charts, the information on their charts, and going out discussing their medical problems, that can be, you can be brought to court for that. But in a regular situation where you're just working in a normal situation, if the manager or someone there brings you into something that's confidential and asking you not to share it, then that is your responsibility not to share it. And I like to think of, if someone comes to me, and we're not talking about just the workplace here, as a personal friend, and say, I'm going to tell you this, but I want to know what you're going to tell me, who it's going to be about. I have a right to refuse to hear that. I'm going to say, if this is so much that you don't want me to ever speak this to anyone else, I think it might not be safe for you to tell me this. And you do have a right to say that, because sometimes friends will share things about other people and it's personal. It's not going to do you any good to know it. And it might make you even feel worse to know it. So maybe you need to leave it alone. I remember once I was attending a congregation, a fellowship with my ex-husband. And something came up in the church, and I would notice that the people would whisper. And I couldn't figure out what was going on because I didn't have any idea. Come to find out, 2 of the members were allegedly committing fornication and adultery. Now, when I found that out, it just really disturbed me. And then when I looked at them, I didn't see them the same. So maybe I would have been better off not to know that information, because the information really did me harm. The way I looked and the way I saw them, I did not see them the same anymore. And sometimes that's not good. So if someone is going to bring you something personal information about someone else, and it might be to your advantage to tell them, I'm going to ask you not to share this with me. I wouldn't feel comfortable talking about that person, and they're not here to defend themselves. And we're going to look now at Proverbs 11:13. A talebearer reveals secrets. And as children of God, we are not talebearers. We don't reveal secrets. We don't glory in anyone else's pain and suffering. What we do, we will tell the truth in love. And if a brother or sister's in sin, they need to be corrected, including me. But we don't we don't find any joy and talking about somebody else's downfall, somebody else's problems. We just really don't do that. Okay, number 5 is be courteous and kind. Even when it appears that kindness is not deserved or reciprocated, this is an important key to godly communication. We're going to look at 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 7, but we will read it at the end. And this expresses, well, I'll tell you later, I'm going to read it at the end. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 7, and we will read it at the end.
I didn't hear it.
This expresses what this involves in its listing of the characteristics of the love of God, which believers have the spiritual ability to manifest when they renew their minds to God's word. Now we will go to 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 7.
Okay, just a minute. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 7. Right?
Okay. Charity, which is the love of God and the renewed mind and manifestation, suffering long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity vaunteth not itself. It is not puffed up. Doeth not behave itself unseemingly. Seek not her own. Is not easily provoked. Thinketh no evil. Rejoices not in iniquity, but rejoices in truth. Bears all things, believeth all things, hope all things, endureth all things. So you see, when we're looking at the way we behave in the workplace, we are believing as children of the Almighty God, but we are acting out of love. We're not doing any of these things. We are patient, and putting up with things a long time does not necessarily mean that you're going to enable someone who's not doing their job. We're not talking about that, but we are kind. We speak to others in a soft, kind voice. We are quick to not talk about them behind their backs, because we realize that we are placed sometimes at these places of employment as a light for our Father. And some practical ways we can demonstrate the love of God at work is to encourage and build up others. So what we have seen tonight is 5 godly ways to communicate in the workplace. We have looked at nonverbal communication, verbal communication, visual communication, and written communication. The way of communication is a reflection of our character. So actually, the way we communicate tells something about who we really are. How we communicate is not separate from who we are. We help others, and we are positive examples and witnesses from God. We speak positively. We endeavor to speak and act in a way that encourages unity. We think before speaking. We are honest and trustworthy. We're courteous and kind, even when it appears that kindness is not deserved or reciprocated. When we do all of these things in the workplace, we are shining examples. We have truly testified who we really are. We don't have to go to the workplace and say, I'm born again, I'm a Jesus follower, and I don't do this and I don't do that. You just go there and you live this way. You communicate who you are by the way you behave, by the way you carry yourself, by the way you support your co-workers, by the way you do your job. You do your job without complaining all the time. You do it just like you're doing it for yourself. You do it just like you do if Jesus was standing right there watching you. And when you move about, you will be a testimony. I mean, people will see you, because a shining light in a dark world is easily seen. So we need to be very, very mindful of how we communicate in the workplace. Thank you.
Yeah.
Not bad.